I'm sorry, I didn't know he hadn't told you. Those were the first words I heard after waking from surgery. The doctor pulled the curtain around my bed and lowered her voice. Your son approved a second procedure, one you never consented to. In that instant my world caved in. I was Carol, 67 years old. I had gone in only for a simple gallbladder removal, a routine operation, nothing more. But as the fog of anesthesia lifted, nothing felt right. My body ached in unfamiliar ways. The smell of antiseptic stung my nose, the harsh lights above burned into my eyes, and my head throbbed as though stuffed with wet cotton. Shaking, I reached for my abdomen. There should have been just a small incision. Instead, my fingers met thick layers of bandages spread across my stomach. Told me what? I whispered, though deep down I already feared the answer. The young doctor sat beside me, a thick folder pressed against her chest. Her eyes, full of pity and unease, avoided mine as she flipped through my chart. Each turn of the page cracked like a gunshot in my ears. Mrs. Miller, she began softly, your son Michael signed authorization for a second surgery while you were under. It wasn't part of the original plan. My heart seemed to stop. Michael, my only son, 42 years old, the one I had trusted without question. That very morning he had smiled at me, told me everything would go smoothly, promised he'd be waiting when I woke. Now all I could taste was bitterness, metallic and cold as memories of that morning replayed. I had worn my favorite pink dress, the one he gave me for my 65th birthday. I'd styled my hair, packed my handbag neatly with my papers, my rosary, and a photo of Edward, my late husband. Michael had been so caring, making me buttered toast with strawberry jam and coffee, rich with cream, just as I loved since childhood. He insisted on driving me himself. Mum, you're not going alone, he said, holding my hand at red lights, playing Frank Sinatra songs I used to hum to when I was young. It's just a minor surgery, a few hours and we'll be home, watching our soaps. Later, Vanessa, his wife, arrived with a bouquet of white flowers, whose sweetness was almost suffocating. She kissed my forehead, her lips icy. Don't worry, Carol, she said. Michael and I will take care of everything. Back then the words had seemed kind. Now they rang with a sinister weight. What kind of surgery? I forced myself to ask, my voice breaking under the weight of betrayal. The doctor hesitated, fidgeting with her pen before she spoke. A neurological procedure. Your son claimed you were showing signs of confusion. He wanted your brain examined to rule out dementia. Her words struck like stones. Mental confusion, senile dementia, brain evaluation. The words tumbled in my head, grotesque and impossible, yet forming a twisted logic I couldn't ignore. My mind, still heavy with anesthesia, fought to comprehend what I was hearing. But I don't have memory problems, I whispered, my voice breaking. I manage my own bills, I cook, I read, I call my friends every day. I don't understand. The doctor gave me a sorrowful look. Mrs. Miller, according to the documents your son submitted, you've been forgetting conversations, losing things, and showing signs of disorientation. He even included a report from a private geriatrician who supposedly evaluated you last month. My blood froze. I had never seen a geriatrician. I had never once discussed my memory with Michael. Every word she spoke was a lie, an elaborate fiction spun by my own son, while I trusted him completely. That's impossible, I murmured, my voice fragile. I've never been evaluated. I've never had memory problems. Michael is lying to me. The doctor closed her eyes as though the weight of the truth pressed on her too. When she opened them, her gaze was heavy with compassion and guilt. Mrs. Miller, I'm only a resident. I had no part in the decision. When I came on shift this morning, both surgeries had already been done, but when I read your file, I couldn't let you wake up without knowing what really happened. Tears spilled down my cheeks. This young stranger had shown me more honesty and kindness than my own flesh and blood. The ache in my chest went beyond physical pain. It was betrayal crushing my heart into shards. Where is he now? I asked, anger rising like fire in my veins. He left a few hours ago, she said softly. He claimed he had important matters to handle and would return this afternoon to take you home. He also mentioned talking with social workers about long-term care options for you. Long-term care, the words tolled in my mind like funeral bells. Suddenly everything snapped into place. The unauthorized surgery, the forged evaluations, The false dementia claims. Michael wasn't just betraying me. He was trying to strip me of my independence, to declare me incompetent. Doctor, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to see every document he submitted, everything he signed, everything he authorized in my name. She hesitated, glancing toward the door, wary. It's my body, I interrupted, my voice hardening for the first time. My brain was operated on without my consent. I have the right to know what was done. Slowly she nodded and opened the thick folder. The sound of rustling papers filled the silence, like secrets whispering their way into the light, and then my heart nearly stopped. On the consent form, scrawled in uneven strokes, was a signature meant to be mine. It looked vaguely similar, but it wasn't mine. Someone had forged my name. Doctor, I breathed, pointing to the trembling line of it. This is not my signature. Someone forged my consent. The doctor's eyes widened. She leaned over the form, comparing the shaky scrawl with signatures from years of my medical file. Her voice dropped to a whisper. My God, you're right. The slant, the pressure, the spacing. This is nothing like yours. A shiver crawled down my spine. They hadn't just cut into my brain without permission. They had forged documents to do it. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a crime. There's more, she said, pulling another paper from the folder. This is the report from the geriatrician who supposedly evaluated your memory last month. I took it with trembling hands. The pages described incidents that had never happened. Me forgetting Edward's name, losing my way home, lashing out in sudden fits of anger. All lies. Every sentence a fabrication, yet written so convincingly that any doctor would believe I was fading into dementia. The doctor who signed this. Do you know him? I asked, pointing at the name. Dr. Ryan Miller. She read. No one by that name works here. His clinic address is on the other side of town. Ryan. The name sent a spark through my foggy mind. Where had I heard it? And then the memory hit me hard. Vanessa's maiden name, her younger brother. He'd once studied medicine, but never finished. The last I heard, he was pushing papers at some clinic. My daughter-in-law, I whispered, the pieces snapping together. Her brother's name is Ryan. He wrote this fake report. It wasn't just Michael. It was Michael and Vanessa, together, using family connections to manufacture lies, planning this for weeks, maybe months. And what? I remembered a conversation I'd overheard by accident just weeks ago. Vanessa's voice in the kitchen. Your mother's house. Those savings she tucked away. At the time, I thought they were concerned for my future. Now the meaning curdled in my stomach. My house, my savings, my life. The surgery hadn't just been unauthorized. It had been deliberate to injure my mind, to make me appear confused and broken, so they could seize control of everything. My own son had signed away my mind for money. Doctor, I said, my voice steelier than I felt, I need you to document everything, copies of every forged paper, and I need to leave, today. Mrs. Miller, she said carefully, you've just endured 2 surgeries, you need recovery time, and there are protocols. Protocol, I snapped, rage blazing through me. The only protocols I see are the ones my son and his wife trampled to steal my life. If I stay here another night, they'll come back with more lies, more signatures, more fake reports. I won't give them that chance. She bit her lip, torn between duty and conscience. I looked her straight in the eye. What's your name? Dr. Patricia Evans. Patricia, I said softly. You have parents. Imagine waking up to find someone had signed off on brain surgery for them, forged their signature, all to rob them of everything they'd built. Would you wait for those people to come back and finish what they started? Her eyes filled with tears. In that moment, her doctor's heart yielded to her daughter's heart. Okay, she whispered, but promise me if you feel unwell, you'll seek care immediately. Brain surgeries can have dangerous side effects. I promise, I said, gripping her hand. But first, I need to get out before they return. Patricia worked quickly, preparing my discharge and copying every forged document. Meanwhile, I dialed the hospital phone with shaky hands. Rachel answered at once. Carol, why are you calling from the hospital? Weren't you supposed to be home resting? Rachel, my voice cracked. I need you to come get me. Now, and don't tell anyone. Not Michael. The silence on the line told me she understood. What happened, sis? I can't explain over the phone. Just come. And bring Arthur. Arthur, the family lawyer trusted for decades. If my suspicions were true, I would need him more than ever. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Rachel said firmly. Not another question asked. He could call the police and claim you're a danger to yourself because of dementia. I froze. He can do that? Arthur's face was grim, with the forged documents he submitted. Yes, at least temporarily, until we prove they're false. That's why we need to move fast. You need safety, and we need a defense. Rachel pulled up to a small, cozy house, the one she bought after her divorce. She had always been stronger than me, more independent. Now I leaned on that strength. You're staying here, she said firmly as she opened the door, and anyone who tries to take you out will have to go through me. That night, sitting in Rachel's kitchen with hot tea between our hands, I finally began to process the nightmare. Arthur had left to investigate, but before he went, he made it clear the situation was grave. Rachel reached for my hand. Carol, there's something I never told you. About 6 months ago, Michael called me. He wanted details about Mom and Dad's will, how much you inherited, the house value, any bank accounts. When I asked why, he claimed it was about your financial security. But Carol, it didn't sound like concern. It sounded like inventory. My stomach twisted. What did you say? I told him to mind his own business, but I knew something wasn't right. The puzzle pieces snapped together. Michael had been planning this for months. My surgery wasn't the cause, just the perfect opportunity. There's more, Rachel whispered. Last week Vanessa came to see me. She's never done that before. She started saying she was worried about you, that maybe it was time to consider a retirement home. And when I told her you were fine, she said maybe I wasn't seeing the signs because of my own age. I gasped. They were isolating me from you. Exactly, planting doubt about both of us. I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me think Michael was coming with the authorities, but beneath the fear something new grew inside me. Anger, sharp and cold. The Carol who avoided conflict had died in that hospital bed. The woman lying awake now was someone else, someone ready to fight. The next morning Arthur returned, a thick folder in his hands. I checked into Dr. Ryan Miller. He doesn't exist. Not in any registry, not in any medical board, but I did find Vanessa's brother, Ryan Herrera. He was expelled from med school 10 years ago for academic misconduct. He even has a record for forgery. My breath caught. They hadn't just faked documents. They'd used a fraud with a history of it. We have enough to press charges, Arthur said. Then his expression darkened. But Michael has already filed an emergency petition. The court hearing is in 3 days. If the judge rules against you, you'll be declared incompetent. You'll lose control over your finances, medical care, everything. 3 days? My voice cracked. That's all I have? Arthur nodded. Michael's affidavit claims you're paranoid since the surgery, that you fled the hospital, and that you're making wild accusations against your own family. Judges treat these cases cautiously. If there's any doubt, they usually side with conservatorship. Rachel slammed her fist on the table. My sister is sharper than half of Washington, and they're going to treat her like a child. Arthur shook his head. It gets worse. Michael submitted witness statements. Vanessa, of course, but also your neighbor Linda Fisher. My blood ran cold. Linda? We barely speak. Arthur read from his notes. She claims you wander outside in your underwear, talk to yourself in the garden, and once mistook her for your deceased sister Carmen. Each word was a dagger, lies twisted from tiny truths. Yes, I talked to myself in the garden. It was how I processed grief, but Michael knew that. He knew all my habits, and he had weaponized them. Arthur closed the file. That's why we can't just defend. We have to go on the attack. Prove this is a calculated conspiracy to strip you of your life. And we only have 3 days to do it. Arthur threw himself into the case, working late into the night. He contacted Dr. Patricia Evans, the resident who had helped me escape, and she agreed to testify about the forged medical documents and the unauthorized brain surgery. Digging deeper, Arthur uncovered more about Ryan Herrera, Vanessa's brother. His record was worse than we thought: forgery charges, arrests for scamming the elderly, and a history of working in shady clinics that were eventually shut down for fraud. Meanwhile, Rachel became my personal detective. She tracked down Linda Fisher, my neighbor, to ask why she had signed such a damning statement. At first Linda refused to speak, but once Rachel explained everything, the woman turned pale. Vanessa, it turned out, had visited Linda weeks earlier. She hadn't asked questions, she had planted them. Hadn't Carol gone outside in strange clothes? Didn't she sometimes talk to people who weren't there? Pushed and pressured, Linda had finally wavered, admitting she might have seen something. Vanessa pounced, shoving papers under her nose for Carol's own good. Manipulation, pure and calculated. Will she help us now? I asked. She's frightened, Rachel admitted. But yes, she agreed to make a statement, correcting her testimony. That night, as I lay in Rachel's guest room, I tallied everything Edward and I had built together. The house worth nearly $600,000. Savings and CDs, $250,000. A life insurance policy of $150,000, nearly $1 million, enough to tempt anyone, enough to justify, in Michael and Vanessa's eyes, the destruction of my mind. But what gnawed at me most wasn't the money, it was the precision of their plan. The forged signatures, the medical lies, the legal traps. Michael wasn't clever enough to orchestrate this alone. Someone else was pulling strings. The morning of the hearing, Arthur arrived at Rachel's with a grim look. Bad news first, I said, bracing myself. The judge is Morrison, conservative. In the past 5 years he's ruled in favor of conservatorship in 85% of cases. My heart sank. And the good news. Arthur's eyes sharpened. I traced Herrera. One of the clinics he worked at specialized in helping families seize guardianship over wealthy elders. Fake doctors, forged reports, coached witnesses. This isn't just your family, Carol. It's a criminal network. I found at least 12 similar cases in the last 3 years. The room tilted. I wasn't just betrayed by my son. I was prey in a machine designed to strip seniors of everything. Arthur, I whispered, do we even have a chance today? He leaned forward. We're not just going to win, we're going to expose them. The courtroom was packed. Michael and Vanessa with their slick lawyer on one side. Reporters Arthur had tipped off on the other. When Judge Morrison entered, silence fell. His presence was sharp, cold, like my father's anger distilled into human form. Michael's lawyer went first, painting a portrait of a woman unraveling. His words dripped with false concern, dementia, paranoia, aggression, confusion. He wielded the forged report like gospel. When Michael testified, tears streamed down his face, his voice cracking as he spoke of his heroic mother now lost to madness. His performance was so convincing, I almost believed him. Vanessa was colder, less polished, but effective. She spoke of confusion, of mistakes, of me mistaking her for my dead sister. Each lie was another nail hammered into my coffin. Then Linda Fisher testified by phone. She sounded terrified, repeating her earlier lies about my supposed erratic behavior. My stomach dropped. She had promised Rachel she'd tell the truth, but fear had silenced her. After 2 hours of devastation, it was our turn. Arthur stood tall, commanding the room. This is not a family protecting their matriarch, he said. This is elder fraud, the most calculated case I have seen in 40 years of practice. The atmosphere shifted. Reporters leaned forward. Michael and Vanessa stiffened. Arthur laid it all out. The forged documents, Herrera's criminal history, handwriting analysis proving my signature had been faked, and the record of fraudulent clinics. But the real blow came when Patricia Evans testified. Nervous but resolute, she declared before the court that my brain surgery had been performed without consent, on the basis of forged documents. "Doctor," the judge asked sharply, "are you saying an unauthorized brain surgery was conducted?" "Yes, Your Honor," Patricia said firmly, and when I informed Mrs. Miller she was lucid, outraged, and entirely competent, her reaction was exactly what I'd expect from any sound-minded patient in her situation. "And in your professional opinion," the judge pressed, "does Mrs. Miller show signs of dementia?" "Absolutely not," Patricia said, her voice steady. Then it was my turn. My legs shook, but my voice was stronger than it had been in days. "Your Honor," I began, "a week ago I was a proud mother. I trusted my son with everything. I believed he loved me. I went to the hospital for a simple surgery. I woke up to betrayal. I woke up to the crushing truth. The son I had loved and raised for 42 years had signed away my dignity. He had given strangers permission to cut into my skull, to tamper with my brain, not out of concern, not out of love, but for greed. He wanted my house, my savings, and every last piece of my independence. And how do you feel about your son's petition for conservatorship?" Arthur asked gently. "Betrayed in the deepest way possible," I said, locking eyes with Michael, "but I also feel determined to fight, not only for myself, but for every elder who has been preyed upon by this kind of fraud. My mind is clear, Your Honor, clear enough to know that my son is no longer the man I raised, clear enough to know I deserve justice." Michael's lawyer came at me like a wolf, sharp questions meant to confuse me, to trip me up, but Arthur had prepared me well. My answers were steady, precise. "Mrs. Miller," the lawyer sneered, "isn't it possible that your paranoia about your family is itself a symptom of decline?" "It's not paranoia when I hold forged documents in my hands," I shot back. "It's not paranoia when there are medical records of an unauthorized brain surgery. It's not paranoia when a criminal network profits from my pain. That's not delusion. That's survival." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Morrison called for a 30-minute recess. They were the longest minutes of my life. I sat between Arthur and Rachel, straining to read the judge's face, my pulse thundering in my ears. When he returned, his tone was grave. "In my 23 years on this bench, I have seen families act out of genuine love, and others act out of greed, but I have never encountered a case that combines medical fraud, forged documents, and organized crime on this scale." My heart hammered as he continued. "After reviewing the evidence, I find that Michael Miller's petition not only lacks merit, but is itself part of a criminal scheme to strip Mrs. Carol Miller of her assets and autonomy." Relief washed over me so fiercely, I nearly collapsed. Rachel gripped my hand tight, and Arthur closed his eyes, as though finally exhaling after days of holding his breath. But Judge Morrison wasn't finished. His voice sharpened. "Even more troubling, Mrs. Miller was subjected to brain surgery without consent, based on forged medical records. That is not just civil fraud, it is aggravated criminal assault." His gaze fixed on Michael and Vanessa, both pale as ghosts. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, your actions represent one of the most despicable forms of elder abuse I have ever seen. Authorizing invasive surgery on your own mother for financial gain is an act of cruelty that defies comprehension." Vanessa's tears fell, but they were tears of fear, not remorse. Michael tried to rise, but his lawyer shoved him back into his chair. Judge Morrison struck his gavel like a gunshot. "The petition is denied. This case will be referred to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. A full investigation into the network behind these crimes will begin immediately. Until then, Michael and Vanessa Miller are barred from all contact with Mrs. Carol Miller." It was over. Not only had I won, but the conspiracy that nearly destroyed me was finally in the open. As we left the courtroom, Michael leaned close enough for only me to hear. The mask was gone, his face twisted with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll regret this. You'll regret this, you crazy old woman." For the first time I saw him clearly, not my son, but a stranger consumed by greed. The days that followed were a blur of interviews and legal proceedings. Reporters wanted my story. The district attorney's office wanted my testimony. Arthur worked tirelessly with investigators, pulling thread after thread from the web that had ensnared me. A week later, he arrived at Rachel's house. His eyes alight. "Carol, we've uncovered something extraordinary. This network has been operating for at least 5 years, and they've already identified over 40 victims." 40, I whispered, horrified. 40 families robbed, 40 elders declared incompetent through forged papers and unauthorized surgeries. Many lost their homes and savings. Some were locked away. 3 had died under suspicious circumstances. The weight of it stole my breath. I had been lucky. I had Rachel. I had Patricia by my side now, and I had the strength to fight. But I couldn't stop thinking of all the other seniors who had been left alone, confused and dismissed when no one believed their story. "There's more," Arthur told me. "The FBI has arrested 12 people connected to this network, 4 doctors, 3 lawyers, and several family members who helped carry out the schemes. Ryan Herrera has agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence, and this morning, Michael and Vanessa were arrested. The charges were staggering: conspiracy, fraud, forgery, aggravated battery. If convicted, they each faced up to 20 years in prison. 20 years. My son, the boy I had raised, loved and sacrificed for, might spend the next 2 decades behind bars. Part of me grieved for the man he might have been. But that sorrow was eclipsed by a greater truth. Justice was being served. Not just for me, but for every victim silenced by this network. 2 months later, I received a call that would change my life again. A trembling voice introduced herself as Isabel, 73 years old. "Mrs. Miller," she whispered, "I think my son did to me what yours did to you, but everyone says I'm crazy. No one believes me. Could you help?" That call opened a new chapter. With Arthur's help, we uncovered that Isabel, too, had been trapped in a nearly identical scheme, though not tied directly to Michael and Vanessa's network. Soon, more calls came: seniors betrayed by their family, people stripped of their autonomy, labeled as demented simply because they resisted. I knew then I couldn't stay silent. With part of the estate I managed to protect, I founded an organization called Silenced Voices. It offered free legal aid, independent medical reviews, and emotional support for elders in danger. We also pushed lawmakers to strengthen protections against elder fraud. 6 months after my hearing, Paul, the hospital's chief of staff, invited me to speak to the medical team about spotting the warning signs. Patricia, now working alongside me at the foundation, stood proudly at my side. "Your courage saved not only Mrs. Miller, but possibly dozens more," Paul told her. Patricia smiled, though guilt flickered in her eyes. "I only did what any ethical doctor should do, but it frightens me to think how many cases I may have missed." "That's why we're here," I told her, "to make sure others don't go unnoticed." When I told my story, from waking up in that hospital bed to standing in front of a judge who saw through the lies, I saw tears glisten in the eyes of doctors and nurses. "Remember this," I told them at the end. "Age does not equal incompetence. If a family suddenly insists an elder is incapable, especially when money or property is involved, those are red flags you cannot ignore." Afterward, a young resident approached me. "Mrs. Miller," he said hesitantly, "I think I have a patient right now in a similar situation. She came in for a hip surgery, but her daughter keeps pushing for additional procedures she swears she never agreed to." My heart clenched. Another victim, another family poisoned by greed. "Take me to her," I said at once. Her name was Elena. The moment I entered her hospital room, I saw the same fear in her eyes that I had once carried. She whispered, "You too? Your family betrayed you too?" Over the next hours, Elena poured out her story: routine surgery twisted into unauthorized procedures, her daughter insisting she was demented, urging doctors to institutionalize her. With Arthur's help and the residents' vigilance, we uncovered the truth. Fabricated psychiatric reports, false witness statements, and a daughter who had paid $20,000 to the very same criminal network. When confronted, Elena's daughter collapsed in confession. I had debts. I was desperate, she cried. I thought it would be easy. Easy? I shouted, fury boiling over. You thought it would be easy to destroy your own mother's mind, to strip her of dignity and freedom? From her bed, Elena's voice broke with sorrow. Martha, if you needed help, why didn't you just ask me? I would have given it to you. I always have. But Martha's reply was chilling. Because it wasn't enough. I wanted everything. It was greed, pure and unrepentant. Elena's daughter was arrested and sentenced to 8 years. Elena regained control of her life and chose to donate a large portion of her estate to silenced voices. I want other mothers to be protected, she told me softly. No woman should ever wake up to discover her own family has betrayed her.